Episode 1. A virtual reality gaming console known as the Nerve Gear is released to the public alongside the world's first virtual reality game called Sword Art Online (SAO). A beta tester named Kirito logs in and visits Aincrad, the setting where the game takes place, and quickly befriends a fellow novice player named Klein, to whom he teaches the basics of the game, including how to defeat a boar. A few hours later, Kirito and Klein discover that they cannot log out. Akihiko Kayaba, the game's creator and employee of the computer corporation Argus, announces to the players that he intentionally removed the option to log out and that players will die if either their Nerve Gear helmet is forcefully removed or their in-game health bar is depleted to zero. He also admits that he created this game as a way to become god over his own dominion, and that the only way to log out of the game is to clear all of Aincrad's 100 floors. Episode 2. 1 month later, over 2,000 players are already dead. Kirito attends a meeting organized by fellow beta tester Diavel, who announces to the attendants that his party has discovered the first floor's boss, Ilfang the Kobold Lord. As players partner up to prepare for battle, Kirito teams up with a young mysterious girl named Asuna. The next day, Diavel and the players arrive at the boss room and battle Ilfang and his minions. When Ilfang's health becomes low, Diavel goes for the finishing attack, but before Diavel can see Ilfang's true weapon, he is mortally wounded. With his dying breath, Diavel tells Kirito to defeat the boss and save the players at all costs. After Kirito successfully defeats Ilfang, the other players accuse Kirito of killing Diavel by having previous knowledge about Ilfang he did not share with other players and label him a beta, a combination of the words beta tester and cheater. Kirito accepts the title and claims the prize for defeating Ilfang, a black leather trench coat that quickly becomes his trademark. He then becomes the first player to clear the first floor by stepping through the gate. Episode 3. Kirito joins a guild named the Moonlit Black Cats, but keeps his character level a secret, as it is much higher than the other guild members. Sachi, a member of the guild, admits to Kirito that she is afraid of dying, but Kirito reassures her. As Keita, the guild's leader, leaves to buy a house for the guild, Kirito and the other guild members go to the 27th floor, where they find and open a treasure chest. However, this triggers a trap, summoning an army of monsters to surround Kirito and the guild. Kirito watches helplessly as the entire guild, including Sachi, are killed by the monsters, leaving him as the only survivor. Keita commits suicide after learning of his guild's death and Kirito's higher level. Afterwards, Kirito travels to the 35th floor, where he defeats a secret boss named Nicholas the Renegade, to obtain an item capable of reviving a dead player. However, Kirito gives the item to Klein instead after learning the item is only effective within 10 seconds of a player's death. Later that night, Kirito receives a pre-recorded message from Sachi, telling him to not blame himself and to keep living strong. Episode 4. A female beast tamer named Silica leaves her party after being caught in a dispute and walks through a forest, only to be ambushed by a group of apes. Silica's dragon familiar named Pina is killed while trying to protect her, but Kirito arrives to save Silica and kill the apes. Kirito agrees to take Silica to the 47th floor to retrieve an item that can revive in-game creatures like Pina within 3 days. He warns her of the existence of orange players, who commit crimes, and red players, who commit murder. After they fight off a plant monster and finally retrieve the item, revealed to be a flower, they are confronted by Rosalia, leader of a guild named Titan's Hand, Silica's party of orange players. Kirito intended on escorting Silica in order to lure and arrest Titan's Hand. Thanks to an ability that could regenerate his health bar instantly from numerous attacks, Kirito effortlessly outmatches and detains the guild members. Silica later thanks Kirito for his help and uses the flower to revive Pina. Episode 5. On the 56th floor, Asuna proposes a plan to lure a boss into a village, but Kirito opposes the idea since it may involve the deaths of non-player character villages. On the 59th floor, Kirito persuades Asuna to rest and relax in a field one afternoon, and she later repays him with dinner at a restaurant for watching over her. The dinner is interrupted when they hear a scream, and they rush outside to a church, where a player named Kainz has been hanged from a noose and impaled with a spear before dying. As Kirito and Asuna investigate the murder, they deduce that there may be an unknown player killer, and they learn that Yoko and her boyfriend Kainz were formerly members of a now disbanded guild called Golden Apple. They find out from a merchant owner, Agil, that the spear was forged by Grimlock, who is the husband of Griselda, the leader of the Golden Apple. Griselda was killed 6 months ago while attempting to sell a valuable ring she obtained from defeating a boss. After realizing that Grimlock may be the suspect, Yoko is abruptly killed by a knife thrown through the window. Episode 6. Kirito fails to pursue Grimlock, who was cloaked in a black robe and holding a teleport crystal. Later on, Kirito accidentally drops a sandwich that was given to him by Asuna, and then realizes that Kainz and Yoko faked their deaths by using a similar teleport crystal. Meanwhile, at Griselda's grave, Yoko and Kainz temporarily disguise themselves and interrogate a former guild member named Schmidt to see if he was the true suspect, but he pleads and proves his innocence. Yoko, Kainz and Schmidt are soon encountered by a guild of red players called the Laughing Coffin who murder other players for fun, but Kirito arrives and forces the guild to retreat. Kirito then learns that Grimlock wanted Griselda dead to acquire the ring for himself. Asuna apprehends Grimlock, who confesses that Griselda was happier in the virtual world compared to the real world, thinking that she might one day leave him. After Yoko, Kainz, Schmidt and Grimlock leave, Kirito and Asuna see a glimpse of Griselda by her grave before disappearing. Episode 7. On the 48th floor, Kirito meets Asuna's friend Lisbeth in her blacksmith shop to request a custom-made sword. Lisbeth is shocked when she finds that Kirito's current sword, Elucidator, is durable enough to destroy the strongest sword she has ever forged, and persuades Kirito to take her to the 55th floor to get a rare mineral from a crystal dragon, so that she can use it to make an even stronger sword. They arrive at the 55th floor and find the rare mineral inside the deep pit of the crystal dragon's nest. During their time together, Lisbeth develops romantic feelings for Kirito, which are strengthened when Kirito defeats the crystal dragon and escorts her to safety. Lisbeth uses the rare mineral to forge a new sword for Kirito named Dark Repulsor. As she then attempts to confess her love to Kirito, Asuna arrives and interrupts them. Lisbeth becomes heartbroken and runs away, quickly realizing Kirito and Asuna having mutual strong romantic feelings for each others. Kirito later finds Lisbeth at a riverbank and thanks her for the time that they spent together. In turn, Lisbeth welcomes Kirito to her blacksmith shop anytime he needs to stop by. Episode 8. On the 74th floor, Kirito hunts down a rare rabbit that contains high-quality meat. Kirito attempts to sell it to a guild, but when Asuna arrives, he decides to let her cook it since Asuna has excellent cooking skills. Asuna's escort, Karadil, opposes Asuna inviting Kirito to her home after he learns that Kirito is a beater, but Asuna disregards him. On the 61st floor, Asuna welcomes Kirito to her home, and they eat the meal she prepared in a stew. Asuna convinces Kirito to team up with her, despite him preferring to be a solo player. The next day, the two head back to the 74th floor, where Karadil challenges Kirito to a duel to prove who can best protect Asuna. Kirito easily defeats Karadil by breaking his sword. Karadil refuses to admit that he lost to a beater and accuses Kirito of cheating. Asuna uses her authority as the second-in-command of her notorious guild, the Knights of the Blood Oath, to order Karadil to return to the guild's headquarters. Kirito and Asuna later clear the dungeon and discover the boss room on the 74th floor. Episode 9. Kirito and Asuna flee the boss room upon seeing the Gleam Eyes, the boss in the form of a chimera. The two encounter and greet Klein and his guild, Fuerinkazen. When a player named Kobats and his guild called the Aincrad Liberation Force appear, Kirito complies with giving Kobats the map of the dungeon, despite Asuna and Klein's objections. Kirito, Asuna and Klein enter the boss room, only to find Kobats dead and the Aincrad Liberation Force badly injured. The trio charge at the Gleam Eyes, but find that the boss is too difficult to defeat. This forces Kirito to execute his secret unique skill, dual-wielding his two swords, to defeat the Gleam Eyes. Kirito collapses from loss of health, but Asuna embraces him. News of Kirito's unique dual-wielding attracts the attention of Heathcliff, leader of the Knights of the Blood Oath, who challenges Kirito to a duel. If Kirito wins, Asuna can quit the guild, but if Kirito loses, he must join the guild. Episode 10. On the 75th floor, Asuna warns Kirito that Heathcliff has a skill which grants him maximum strength with his sword and defense with his shield. During the duel in an arena, Kirito attempts to strike Heathcliff, but the latter manages to parry it and defeats the former. Later on the 55th floor, after Kirito confides in Asuna that he averted joining guilds due to the incident with the moonlit black cats, Fellow guild member Godfrey summons Kirito and Karadil, taking them through a canyon to a dungeon on the 55th floor for a skill assessment. As they stop to take a break from their travel, Kirito and Godfrey realize that Karadil tainted the water to paralyze them. After brutally murdering Godfrey, Karadil reveals himself as a member of Laughing Coffin. As Karadil tortures Kirito, Asuna arrives just before Kirito runs out of health and gives him an antidote crystal. Karadil deceitfully surrenders to Asuna and tries to attack, but Kirito defends Asuna and kills Karadil. Kirito and Asuna kiss, promising to never leave each other. Kirito requests to stay the night with Asuna at her house, and there they agree to marry. Episode 11. Kirito and Asuna have an online marriage, in which they are granted a temporary leave from the Knights of the Blood Oath to go on a honeymoon at a village in a log cabin on the 22nd floor. As they venture deep inside a nearby forest, they find a lost girl who suddenly collapses, discovering that there may be a possible glitch since she does not have a cursor above her, so they end up taking her back to their log cabin for the night. The next day, the girl wakes up and remembers her name as Yui, and she decides to refer to Kirito and Asuna as her parents. The three of them go to the first floor to find out if anyone is searching for Yui. They encounter the Aincrad Liberation Force extorting taxes from a daycare owner named Sasha and three of the children in her care. Asuna instills fear on the Aincrad Liberation Force with the use of her sword, causing them to retreat. Yui soon starts to panic and momentarily glitches before being rendered unconscious again. Episode 12. At the daycare center inside a church, Kirito, Asuna, Yui and Sasha are visited by Yulia, second in command of the Aincrad Liberation Force. Yulia explains that Thinker, leader of the Aincrad Liberation Force, was overthrown by Kibeu, who trapped Thinker in a dungeon on the first floor 3 days ago. Kirito, Asuna and Yui agree to help Yulia rescue Thinker. As they clear the dungeon and find Thinker, they are ambushed by a boss named the Fatal Scythe. Kirito and Asuna attempt to fight the Fatal Scythe, but are completely outmatched and overwhelmed. Yui steps in and destroys the Fatal Scythe in a ball of fire, revealing that she is an indestructible in-game object. Kirito and Asuna discover that Yui is an artificial intelligence character designed to aid the players, but was forced to monitor them instead. Yui admits that she felt like a daughter to Kirito and Asuna when she interacted with them. Yui is then sentenced to deletion due to her interference with the game, but Kirito manages to use the Game Master console to save Yui from complete deletion by transforming her data into an in-game item, a crystal drop that he gives to Asuna. Episode 13. While fishing near a lake, Kirito encounters Nishida, an avid fisherman. He remarks that, despite honing his fisherman skills, he is unable to cook delicious dishes with what he catches. Kirito invites him to his home for Asuna to cook the fish he caught for them. During their meal, Nishida mentions to Kirito that he tried to catch a huge fish so many times before but failed, and he asks Kirito to help him. Later, Nishida manages to hook the fish and passes the rod to Kirito to reel it in. The fish is revealed to be a huge monster, which Asuna defeats. Soon after, Kirito receives a message from Heathcliff. Before leaving Nishida, Asuna recounts how she developed feelings for Kirito over time. Kirito and Asuna meet up at the guild's headquarters, where they learn that a party of 20 guild members had been trapped and killed in the boss room of the 75th floor. A team of players from several guilds, including Kirito, Asuna, Klein and Agil, are assembled together. Once inside, the team battles the terrifying boss of the 75th floor, the Skull Reaper. Episode 14. After the Skull Reaper is finally defeated, Kirito deduces that Heathcliff is secretly Akihiko Kyaba's avatar, exposing him as indestructible and revealing him as the boss of the 100th floor. Heathcliff paralyzes everyone except Kirito and challenges him to a duel evenly matched, promising that the remaining players will be logged out of the game if Kirito wins, to which Kirito accepts the challenge and fights Heathcliff. When Heathcliff prepares to make a finishing blow, Asuna jumps in between him and sacrifices herself, leaving Kirito stricken with grief. Heathcliff slays Kirito, but Kirito overrides the health bar and defeats Heathcliff, thereby clearing the game. On a floating platform over Aincrad, Akihiko explains to Kirito and Asuna that he wanted a world that everyone imagined in their hearts. He congratulates them on clearing the game and bids them farewell. Kirito and Asuna tell one another their real names and embrace each other as the world falls apart. In the real world, Kirito awakes in a hospital and sets off to find Asuna.